to the Funny Won't Stop podcast. Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy New Year and holiday and all that shit. I'm here with me today. I got John Brown, who you've seen here on the podcast before, as well as Bob McClure. Basically, it's the last podcast of the season, and we have a new show here at the Funny Stop Comedy Club that's on the first Tuesday of every month. It's been going with, this is going to be, what, the fourth show tonight?
I think so.
Yeah, fourth show.
So this will be their fourth show, and basically what it is it's a storytelling show. But I'm going to let those guys explain what it is a little bit better than I am, because these are the guys who run the Storytime show on the first Tuesday of every month here at the Funny Stop.
Yeah, so I mean, we're kind of still finding ourselves with the show, but it's basically me and Bob host it, and then we'll have a couple guest sets, a couple guest comedians, whoever shows up, come in and do a couple sets, and then we have two other comics that will join us as guests, and we'll each do a 5-minute set, and then we all four get up on stage together and tell stories based on whatever two themes we pick for the night. So
what John and I are both storytelling comedians, so what we really wanted to do was have a show that highlights storytelling and that kind of part of the craft. And what we really love about being comedians, at least what I really love, I don't know if I can't speak for you, is when you're doing comedy is hanging out with the other comedians, bouncing jokes off of them, telling stories, just kind of razzing each other.
Making fun of Bill.
Making fun of Bill.
Yeah,
so we're trying to bring that to the stage for the audience this year. So.
Yeah.
It is. That is one of my favorite parts of doing stand-up comedy is commuting.
Getting made fun of.
Yeah, commuting with local comics in green rooms and bars and backstages, and basically just getting shit talked constantly.
Yeah. It's all in good fun.
It is.
Yes.
That it is.
And sometimes bitterness and jealousy, but it's mostly
by and large,
it's mostly
good humor.
Bob has the most, I would say, comedy seniority out of the three of us here. I've been at it for 4 years. John for 4 years, I believe, and Bob what?
4 years.
Really? I thought you were.
Yeah, no, he just started in LA, so it seems like he's been doing it longer.
Yeah.
But actually, shit.
Well, it's because we didn't start with Bob. So like Bob was like, when we were like a year in, Bob was also like a year in, but he had just come here.
Yeah.
So so it was like.
Yeah, I was about a year in the first time that I did the road, coming out here with Sean from LA, and then COVID brought me back here. So November of 18 is when I started.
I mean, because the first time I met you, you were featuring for Sean here at the Funny Stop, which, I was only a couple of years in. So to me at the time, that was like, hey, that was, and it still is awesome. I mean, Bob's headlining shows here at the Funny Stop. Now, matter of fact, he's going to be here at the Funny Stop mid-month.
15th through the 17th.
Yeah, 15th through the 17th with Dan Brown doing a co-headlining show.
Way to know your guests and dates, by the way.
Yeah.
That's really good.
You know what? This shit is not going to come out by the time your show is, so none of that's going to matter. Yeah, none of it. But actually, Bob, speaking of Sean and storytelling, Bob here just got back from the Friars Club.
I did, yeah. That was pretty awesome.
Go ahead, tell us about that.
Yeah, I've been working with Sean Lynch for 3 years now. And Sean is, he had his 50th birthday. He's been in comedy since he was in his 20s, and we roasted him at the Friars Club. So it was really cool just, growing up as a fan of comedy, knowing the history of the Friars Club and the importance of the Friars Club. Just being in that building in Manhattan was really cool. It's absolutely gorgeous, all oak and marble, and I mean, it's unbelievably beautiful. And getting to kind of check something off that bucket list, like I did a show with the Friars.
Bob wore a suit.
I wore a suit. I did, yeah.
It's pretty crazy. He looked good.
Yeah, he has a suit, just not any Christmas sweaters. So.
No, I do not own a Christmas sweater.
And for those of you who don't know, if you are familiar with Comedy Central and like the roasts on Comedy Central, this is like the Friars Club is like the place where the roasting originated.
Yeah, I mean, the Friars was where, when comedy was coming up in New York, the Friars was where those people hung out. I mean, it was, the plaque on the front of the building says the Jerry Lewis Monastery. I mean, it's, Jerry Lewis, Lucille Ball, Don Rickles, Ed Sullivan, Billy D. Williams. I mean, all of those guys.
Yeah, it has a big history with like the Rat Pack era.
Yeah. So it was just really cool to be in that building and be in the same space as them, and then obviously to do a roast. I mean, to do a Friars Club roast was really awesome. I met a lot of really cool people, and just as somebody who loves comedy and has always dreamed of doing comedy, getting off a train at Grand Central Station and walking down Park Avenue to go do a show at the Friars Club was a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So, like you said, you've done for this show, for the Storytime show, you've done at least 3 shows already. What kind of topics have you had already for storytelling?
I think we had dumbest thing you did when you were drunk.
The most embarrassing moment of my life was another one.
Most embarrassing moment of my life. That was a good one. What else? We've had some pretty good ones.
Well, and what's fun about these too is that these aren't necessarily bits that are in these comedians' repertoire. They are coming up and they are telling a story, and they're doing it in the way that only a comedian can do. They're making it funny, and it's true, and it's raw, and it's just a lot of fun. It very much feels like just hanging out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I actually like doing it where like I haven't written any of mine down that I've done so far. Like I like it being like a little bit more natural. Even so, whenever like one of the comedians has a story that coincides with the person telling the story, like they can chime in and start telling that story. Like it's I mean we fill 45 minutes basically, so it's not like it's just you telling your story and that's it. We're interrupting each other, making fun of each other's stories,
making fun of each other,
making fun of Bill, riffing on them. And the hope of it is, for me too, is like, because I do like to tell longer stories in my regular stand-up sometimes, is that I'll have something that hits so hard here that I'm
it's a bit.
Yeah.
And that's what I like is that you could very much so discover a bit out of this.
Yeah.
And then the other comedians kind of razzing and making fun of you. You're getting tags out of that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, with a decent story and a couple of good tags, you could really come out of this show with a decently fleshed out bit that, a little bit of work and some open mics and some show. I mean, you could really turn into something,
At the very least, they had a good night making fun of me. I mean,
who doesn't have a good night making fun of Bill?
And it is hard to find time, especially on a Tuesday night, for comics to find time to work out longer stuff that they may have been wanting to talk about for a while. So
sure.
Because storytelling as a stand-up is difficult because it's so hard to find time and open mics and shit to work out long stories.
100%.
I mean, you're basically like, even if you get an open mic like at Pharmacy on Sundays where we can do like pretty much however much time we want, as long as we don't go too overboard, it's still like, if you're telling a longer story, 10 minutes is basically the limit there. You're basically just choosing to use your whole set for one story. You know what I mean? Like it's
right. And you and I both have stories that are that long.
Yeah, you more than I do.
Yeah, that's true.
I did a 5 or 6 minute joke on the fly about the rat czar in New York on Sunday.
Christmas, that was funny.
Yeah, it's fun to do shit like that every once in a while, but you don't always get a chance. So wanted to kind of get that, and we know who the bigger storytellers are in the scene, in the
area.
It's gonna be hard to, like, we have some friends that we want to get on the show that are more like one-liner comics, and I think that's gonna be maybe something to get them out of their comfort zone.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it would be fun to see those kinds of comedians, like one-liner comedians, do a storytelling, do a story. I think that'd be just to see how their brain works in a longer bit.
Yeah, and then you have, whenever you're sitting around bullshitting with comics, you always have the person that has a story for everything, and that's like, like every single thing that comes up is like, oh, I got one about that, you know, and like that was another.
You know, I pointed at myself, but I heard that in Bill's voice.
That was another.
I
possible,
felt it coming. I just.
That was another possible name for the show, but we figured it was too long. I got one about that.
Yeah,
that was fun.
Yeah, we bounced a ton of names. We were like, we were thinking like, oh, that reminds me of a time was a name that we were thinking about for a while, or like, oh, now that you mention, or something like that. But story time with Bob and John. It's simple, it's quick, it's easy,
and we're lazy, so that's
we're lazy.
Yeah.
Well, that's like, I mean, starting out in stand-up, you do see a lot of comics come out, and they want to tell stories. They want to tell things that they relate to, and it's like a long car ride where you leave the house and you got a destination, but you got shit in between. So it's either going to be a boring-ass car ride from point A to point B, that you got to make it entertaining.
To me, the hardest part is landing it. That's the hardest part.
If you go on for several minutes and then your punchline just dies and you had nothing in between.
And even if your tags are good, your tags can be good throughout the story, but if the punch doesn't hit, it.
Yeah, you gotta like know where you're gonna wrap it up at, and that's what like I do a lot of the times at Pharmacy on Sundays is that I'll just go with a story. And sometimes I just don't get there, and I'm just like, I gotta find an ending for that, and it's and it's fine because it's an open mic, but it's like, but that's what happens a lot of the times. That's the hardest part for me is figuring out where to end it.
John knows I have this bit that I've been working on since LA. I mean, I've been working on it for 2 or 3 years, and I just can't figure it out. The ending of Chuck E. Cheese, I cannot get it to where I like it, and it's exceedingly frustrating. So maybe one day we'll do kid-themed restaurant stories. No, I think the pitfall too that a lot of like younger comedians or like less experienced comedians fall into is that they tell you had to be there stories.
Yes.
Like that is something that you see a lot when you've done as many open mics, I think, as the three of us have done. There's a lot of you had to be there stuff, and so I really would love for some of maybe lesser experienced or new comedians to come out and see the show and see what like a built-out story looks like in the context of.
I mean, I think most stories are you had to be there stories, but the skill in it is figuring out how to put the audience in that situation without using so much context that you bore the shit out of them.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's...
Because a lot of times those stories, when you're telling them amongst your friends or family and stuff like that, there's certain aspects that they can relate to, and that's why they're going to find it funny. And that's why to you, you're like, oh, I tell this story, everybody loves it. But then when you come out to an environment like this and you start going on, none of these people really know you.
Yeah.
So they're not relating. So yeah, finding a way to make them and draw them in, to make them feel like they're that person, that they're your friend or your family member who relates to that. And it's very difficult.
And if you have a day job, most of us have a day job, and you always have people at your day job go, oh, you could get so much material from this place or whatever, and it's like, no, they don't know you.
Yeah,
Like, I could do an hour at a company picnic and
murder. And absolutely crushed.
But it's all inside jokes. Nobody knows you people. You know, like it's because I've been working at my place for 10 years, so it's like you have fucking stories. You know what I mean? Like it just, but there's no way to convey that to an audience and in a short amount of time.
That can also be frustrating too. I've definitely gone up on stage at mics and stuff with stories that I thought were really funny, but there's so much context that you need in order to understand why it's funny to me that it fails, it falls flat. I very distinctly remember I used to try to tell this story about this time we had a 3-legged dog that saved my sister from a raccoon, which like on the surface of it sounds like a really interesting story, but there's just so much damn context that has to go into it.
I think something with like a big thing in comedy is the rule of 3, meaning like 3 taglines for a joke, and if you go over that, it gets redundant. I also think it's like a different rule of 3 that applies to stories. That's 3 people. So like if you have to introduce more than 2 people into the story, it's probably not going to work.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't have fucking 6 characters in a joke. You know, I mean, it just doesn't work like that. It just takes too long.
Yeah, unless you're telling like a double date story or something like that. But even then, the other couple is a single entity.
Right,
They're a
yeah.
single. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, like I said, this is December. This is the last podcast of this year. And we got a lot of people coming up here for the new year at the Funny Stop. Is there anybody in particular who will be coming here to the Funny Stop in the new year that you're looking forward to seeing, or that you haven't met yet or want to work with?
I have met him, and I haven't worked with him, and I love him, and I'm featuring for him, and that's Joe Mackey.
Looking forward to that.
I'm not, I think it's April, but I'm not positive. It's either late March, early April, somewhere around there. But yeah, Joe Mackey is one of my favorite joke writers that I've ever heard. He's just so clever with his joke writing. And last time he was here, he killed. I saw him right before the pandemic at another comedy club, and he was one of the best comics I've ever seen there. And I'm really excited to work with him. But,
That's awesome, dude.
yeah.
I mean, for me, you know, I'm looking forward to March working here with Sean again.
Yeah.
Those are, like, being on the road with Sean because he and I get along so well together. We're very similar. We have very similar senses of humor. That is the most fun that I ever have, is doing weekends with Sean. So I'm just looking forward to a bunch of us heading over to the comedy condo after the show and hanging out. And, you know, and if you love storytellers, Sean Lynch is a good guy to come see.
Yeah,
So,
Sean is always like my favorite hang.
he's a great
Funny
hang.
stuff.
He's a phenomenal hang.
Sean and Rick Adana are probably the two best hangs of funny stuff. Great guys. I mean, really funny comics. But when you've been around for 3 or 4 years, and a lot of the comics that come here come every year, you don't really watch them anymore. You know, like, it's more about, like, are they cool to hang out with?
Yeah.
You know, like, that's it. Like, it's...
Absolutely. So I love the hangs. That's,
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
you know,
the hangs are the best, especially like you said, like Rick Adana. I had Sean. Sean was actually probably one of the first comics I really got a chance to hang out with and get to know.
I remember that. We went to Mike's place.
Oh yeah, I took these guys to Mike's place, my
God damn it,
favorite
Bill.
shithole. And no, but we hung out all night over at the Red Fox, and then the next day we all out and had lunch together. And him and Sean's wife and my wife got to meet each other and hang out. Sylvie, she's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And
If you don't know what Mike's Place is, it's the Cheesecake Factory of diners, and it's Bill's favorite restaurant.
it is a barn and a castle and a bus and a boat.
Imagine
with a
a
20-page
with an X-wing fighter out
with a
front.
20-page menu.
Oh yeah.
Imagine that somebody living in a trailer in Pensacola, Florida, hit the fucking lottery.
It is
Excited.
Yeah.
It is a
Yes.
trailer park
Absolutely.
food fever dream is what it is. And the owner, Mike, is an amazing guy.
And the food is ridiculous. The sandwiches are always like, we took a fish sandwich and put a steak on it. What?
Yeah.
Like,
they have
They have
a
everything. Yeah, that's not usually a good thing.
Yeah, they have a Reuben there called the Jedi Jane that's just fucking insane. But aside from that, there's several people here I'm looking forward to working with next year. One who's just going to be here in January. I've worked with a couple times before, Greg Morton.
Yeah,
Greg Morton is
he puts on a good show.
and he's super personable with other comics. And like Mike Gersh, who's featuring for him, he convinced Mike to write his book. Who had been huge for Mike. And then, but as far as that. I'm looking forward to working with like Lynn Koplitz, Pablo Francisco, and then I've worked with TJ Miller a couple times already, and I'm probably going to be featuring for him here in May. But the cool part about that is, I, one, find him very funny, and two, he brings a huge crowd. I mean, it's always been like standing room when he comes here, so it's a great crowd to get in front of.
Yeah.
So, all right, everybody. Thank you for watching the this last episode of the Funny Won't Stop for the 2022 season. Merry Christmas to these guys. And on top of that, John here has an amazing podcast called the Brown Petri Dish Podcast. You definitely got to check out his podcast. It's absolutely awesome. Bob, do you have a podcast?
I'm on one of John's podcasts.
Yes, we have to record new episodes. We kind of got delayed for a while because of some family issues. and then we just never picked it back up. But we're going to. It's me, Bob, and Tim Wolf.
He's a great comedian, great local comedian.
Yeah, Tim's one of my favorite joke writers that I know.
What do you guys call it?
Running Down a Bit.
Yeah, it's called Running Down a Bit. We have a parody of Tom Petty's Running Down a Dream as our theme song.
And we bring new bits and bounce them off each other. And
Well, then look forward to checking out Running Down a Bit and the Brown Petri Dish. And you can find them on what, like Anchor, Spotify, all those
Brown
places?
Petri Dish you can find anywhere you get audio podcast. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all those. iHeart, I think it's on. And then the Running Down a Bit podcast, when we relaunch it, it'll be mainly a YouTube show, but you'll also be able to get audio at those places as well.
And
come see Storytime with John and Bob.
yes, and definitely come first Tuesday every month, story time with John and Bob. And as for the Funny Won't Stop podcast, look forward to in the new year. We'll be going audio finally. I'm going to take all the shows from last year and convert them all to audio, and you'll find us on wherever you can find audio podcasts. So look for that as well, and have a wonderful night.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.